Servus, Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I have a little update about the events on New Year's Eve, mainly in Berlin, but also in other major cities. This data today that I want to share with you only is from Berlin, though. As I told you in my last video, there were 145 people that were arrested. Of course, all of them are free again. They are awaiting their trial, but they're not in jail or anything. But 145 people had been arrested, and the newspaper and the state and everyone told us that 45 of them were actually Germans. And I already told you back then that I don't believe that. And the newspaper, Die Junge Freiheit, a conservative German newspaper, they asked directly the authorities in Berlin, the police in Berlin, and they got a surprising response, really. They said that 11 of those 45 people had actually dual citizenship. That means they hold a German passport as well as a foreign one. And in this case, the second, or should I say the original nationality of these brave individuals was, well, the usual suspects, the usual nationalities that you find among people who do such things. Now you might say, well, 11 out of 45, that means that still 34 people were then really Germans, right? I would strongly disagree here, since the Migrationshintergrund, a background of migration, that is something that is a parameter that is no longer really relevant for our law enforcement. It is no longer added to the data. It used to be the way, couple of years ago in Germany, you could still hear, well, these people had a background of migration. That means they might have a German passport now, they might have been born in Germany, but they don't have a drop of German blood in them. All their grandparents and their parents, they're all foreigners. They might not even speak German, of course, but they're born here and they have a German passport and they don't feel German. And that's probably the most important thing. They don't identify with Germany. When it comes down to it, they don't play in the same team. They're very much aware of the fact, and you notice it in everyday life, that they're on a different team. They're not our people and they don't want to be our people. They see themselves in competition with us, and they actually see themselves as our enemies. Or they see us as their enemies. That would be the better way to phrase it, I guess. And this is why this migratory background is something that this newspaper was, of course, interested in. But the police just said, well, we're no longer really checking this, or we're no longer publishing this. This is a parameter that's not in our database anymore. And then there is another trick or another thing you can do, and that is publish the first names, because you cannot identify a person by first name. And that is why in former times, I think when there were some things going on in Dortmund, they published the first names. There is this young event scene in Germany, group dynamical effects set in and so on and so forth, and Cologne-like events ensued. And there in Dortmund, they published the first names, and well, those names were not German, let me tell you. And that is another way you can identify whether or not a group or individuals from a group are really German, or if they're maybe from Lebanon or from Jordan or something like that, right? Because of the, in that case, Arabic names that you will see, and they're very distinct, these names, and they're not, German people don't give these names to their children. So there you go. But Berlin law enforcement said that they would not publish the first names of these remaining 34 people with German passports. The CDU party in Berlin, they also wanted to know these first names, but the police in Berlin says that they have no way of analyzing this data, and it's not possible to publish these names. Yeah, they have a list of 34 names, and it's, they just can't write the computer algorithm to filter out the first names of a data set with the length of 34. Yeah, that's Berlin for you in a nutshell, I guess. Maybe they really actually can't do it because they're that incompetent. I wouldn't put it past them. But I do admit, however, that some of these people, some of these remaining 34 people might have been biologically or ethnically Germans, And that is because 3 years ago, I mentioned in my last video, I did a similar video 3 years ago. That was before the great health scare when you couldn't party anymore outside in the last 2 years. So that was the last chance they had to do what they did. And that time also a lot of communists in Germany had their little party event. I think in Leipzig it was mainly Konnewitz. And these people are ethnically German. Many of them at least are. They're just communists who hate our country. And this is why they target and attack German families and their property, and that is what they always do. This is what communists do when they're in power. You see that in China and North Korea, for example, but also in Cuba. And this is what communists do when they're not yet in full power. And that's when you get these events like after World War I in Germany, Weimar Republic, for example. This is when socialists and communists targeted German families in a very vicious way, and Germans had to defend themselves against them. And this is what you can see in the United States, for example, in recent years, you know, these mostly peaceful demonstrations, right? This is nothing but socialist, communist attempts at destabilizing a society. This is when they're not fully in power yet, but once they're fully in power, well, then you have North Korea. Good luck with that. So we can see here once again that the German media and the German government here, especially the government of Berlin, they lied to the people because they know the truth, of course. I mean, they knew on January 1st already. They had the information, they had the IDs of these people, they arrested them, they know the full names and addresses, and they know what kind of passport they have. They know everything about these people, but they choose not to tell us. And all the newspaper articles made it sound like that it was, you know, a colorful group of people. And of course it was Germans, non-Germans, you know, everyone was in there. It wasn't a distinct ethnic group or a mix of distinct ethnic groups. No. It was Germans who did that. Look, there were Germans, dozens of Germans among them. I think there wasn't a single one. And if there was a tiny group of Germans, because of these remaining, I repeat, of these remaining 34 people out of these 145 people who were arrested on January 1st, well, I would be surprised if there were any Germans. And if there are any Germans, they are socialist, radical people, communists who try to destabilize Germany or to just like to cause some mayhem. I really just wanted to give you that update so that you know at least what has come to light so far, and it is right along those lines that I were thinking. I was once again correct, but once again, this is not really a great accomplishment. It is just very clear to everyone who still remembers the last couple of years. It is very easy to predict, and you know what's going on. But I have to admit, it is frustrating that our government forces us first to speculate in the first days until they bit by bit give us, and I also told you it was going to be like that, they give us the full or at least a part of the picture then. And once again, we still don't have the full information because I'm really sure it is that embarrassing for them, and it shows how blatantly and how directly they lie to the people. This is why they want to wait releasing this data, but at least now we know that there are a lot of dual citizens here, and Germany now wants to change these rules also. So in the future, there should no longer be a pressure on these individuals when they turn 18 to choose one nationality or the other. They can just keep both now. This is the way it's going to be in Germany. And of course, when they do something great or when they do something good, then they will be cool migrants from Syria, and when they do something bad, they will just be Germans. And by the way, this is also something that was found out now in the course of these events by the newspaper Die Junge Freiheit. I was actually not aware of that, even though, once again, I would have guessed it. It was news to me, actually. When people have a German passport and another passport, they're automatically filed as Germans in all crime statistics and all statistics relating any offenses or something. So bear that in mind when you hear these statistics where irregular guests are still vastly overrepresented with respect to their contribution to the local population. They're still overrepresented, but everyone who has dual citizenship is automatically counted as only German. That is something, a very important outcome of this now. Alright, this is as far as my update goes. Let me know what you think about that, and maybe give me some information about your country, about how it went there, and especially as it relates to the way that this information, this demographic information, is compounded and filed in these official statistics, and what the media, for example, discloses and what they choose not to disclose, like I described now in this video in the case of Berlin and Germany. Servus, Kameraden!